If you enjoy this channel, you will know that we have covered many things up to now, not just astral projection, but also the ego, suffering, meditation, dreams, consciousness, and unconsciousness. Explanations that go beyond intellectual, quantifiable information, and among all of this, beyond all of this, there is something at the basis of it all, at the primal, creative life force of it all, which is sexual energy. If sexual energy has such a foundational significance to all this, then why is it so commonly overlooked in spiritual topics when clearly sexual energy has a grip over us on a collective and personal level, and not just on a human level, but also in the world of plants, animals, nature, and the cosmos itself is imbued with sex or sex energy. Even a supernova can be seen as an explosion of life force or prana. And sex is at the grip of our culture too. Just look at every pop song or movie, there's always love, lust, or sex surrounding it. From the moment we are born through the vagina, to seeking the right sexual partner for happiness, to becoming passionate in many different ways, we are born through sex. And it is through sex again that we can become born again spiritually. This art and science is called sexual transmutation. A lot of you already have some knowledge about this, but for those who don't, bear with me. We will talk about this and how it applies to the spiritual path. I have intentionally put off talking about this here for a long time because I really want to communicate this in an effective way for everyone to understand, because clearly the deeper a topic is, the much more easily it is to misjudge, misunderstand, and misinterpret it. And so this episode is intended to be more like a lecture. So take notes, meditate, and try to understand what will be discussed here today. And if you have any questions afterwards, please do ask below, as I'm sure many of you will have a lot of questions about this interesting and deep topic. At the basic understanding of sexual transmutation, we can understand it as that we can save sexual energy and it can then be harnessed and redirected. And the longer we retain and sublimate sexual energy, we can experience massive increases in overall energy levels. We become more energetic beings. This ultimately gives more power to our energy body too, so i.e. our etheric and astral bodies. And not just that, but it energizes your physical life as well, giving you more energy to look after your family better, tend to your business, clean the house, cook, read, exercise, meditate, and even astral project, all in the same day and with energy to spare. That's how much this spiritual principle can affect the quality of your life when integrated in an effective and mindful way. This practice is actually one of the main reasons I can stay so productive in my own personal life. I would personally doubt my abilities if I didn't practice this. And so there's an aspect of energy and manifestation here too, which you should be able to contemplate as a general basis of understanding throughout this episode. There is a sort of building up of and condensing of bioelectrical currents that run through the manifestation faculties of our being. That's just one way you could put it. Now, don't worry, I'm going to get more specific as to what sexual transmutation actually is and entails, and how to do it as well. So I'll be discussing this throughout the video, but for those who are just slightly interested in this, might be annoyed at how long the video will probably be, but I'm going to trust that the ones who are actually serious about this will stick with me throughout the whole thing in order to get all the information. This is a tremendous and mature discipline, and not something I want you to misunderstand. Just as there are tons of common mistakes made in astral projection, there are even more in this topic of sexual transmutation. Firstly, a quick shout out to Rain, Samson, Asaf, Bulway, Navar, and Michelle, who all became Patreons. Thank you all for joining. If you'd like to support the channel too for just a few dollars, please feel free. You'll get access to our Astral Doorway Discord group where we have meetups twice a month to discuss all things spiritual. It's a more interactive way to ask me questions related to your own path and learning. I also want to mention that Amazon has given me the option to sell hardback versions of my book now. So if you're interested, just search Beyond Dreaming by Jean Hart in your country's Amazon. So to get back to the topic, in reality, to deeply understand this topic of sexual energy and transmutation properly requires many hours of study and many months and years of practice. This practice is not for the light-hearted. If you are not interested or serious about this topic and you think it sounds stupid and you're convinced that purifying and conserving our sexuality has nothing to do with the path of spiritual realization, then simply don't listen to this episode. I understand this information will be challenging for many, but at the same time, there are many who have been waiting and anticipating for me to talk about this. And if you have an open mind and try it for yourself, you should see amazing results, just as many around the world are experiencing too. Millions, in fact, since this topic has become highly popularized online recently. So, my attempt here to give you a summary of the significance and power of sexual transmutation will probably end up being one of my longer videos, but still, this is really not even long enough for me to cover all bases. So, if you want me to expand on another video on something more specific, just let me know in the comments below. For some of you, you will already be practicing this. I've already had a lot of questions from you regarding this and how I feel about it and what I do. For example, the nofap community has become quite popular recently. I'll leave a link below if you want to see that, but just be warned, it's a bit of a frenzy because it's a public forum, but I think it's a good resource to see examples of how the destructive application of sexual energy can essentially ruin lives. There's almost 1 million members there, so there's a lot to read, and just be mindful that not everyone is exactly clued up on the most effective methods. And for others, this may be the first time you're hearing about this. If you end up falling in love with this, then I have some highly recommended reading for you in the description below. There are also some videos and articles in there too, but my biggest recommendations are the books by Mantak Chia and the Tantra section on the AYP website. And also check out the free PDF called Brahmacharya by Swami Sivananda. Let's get one thing straight. What we are going to talk about here is not sexual abstinence or the repression or suppression of sexual energy, like a priest or nun, right? That's dangerous, and I do not recommend it. Actually, the more sexual power you have, the better, because it means you have more potential to work with. Sex energy is creative energy, and it will build up and must be used. It can either be used like an ordinary person, or it can be transmuted for higher purposes. So, in fact, sexual transmutation is different to celibacy. It means to honor, respect, cleanse, and cultivate and channel this energy in a superior way compared to our usual animalistic behaviors, such as, most famously, watching pornography and masturbation. Now, for those of you reacting to that, let's not be judgmental or start to feel guilty or doubt ourselves morally or ethically or think we're sinners or something. This is beyond all of that. Let's instead seek to understand. Now, at the same time, this does not mean that we don't engage in sex. Uh, I still have sex with my partner, but something is fundamentally different. I don't experience the orgasm. In other words, I don't ejaculate. And this is one of the core principles of this practice. Now, at first, you may think, what's the fun in that, right? But actually, there is much more fun. In other words, there is more bliss and happiness that comes from it. So, more on this as we continue. Keep in mind that this sexual principle is something that most people either love or hate. Those are the initial reactions. You have to love this practice in order to succeed with it. It is a serious, mature, and devotional practice. I was first introduced to it by my Gnostic teacher about 8 years ago. I struggled for years with it, and finally, it's been over 5 years now that I've been consistently and successfully practicing it. And it has changed every aspect of my life, relationships, and my spiritual experiences in profound ways. Now, please note that by absolutely no means should you rationalize or believe that you must do this in order to astral project. Remember, astral projection is accessible to us no matter how good or bad or pure or impure a person is. Spirituality is not good or evil. What is good or evil is what the individual makes of it. Regardless, the spirit and the ability to astral project always exists, no matter what. With all that said, this principle can act as a tremendous boost toward your efforts. Astral projection in reality requires a lot of spiritual energy, and saving sexual energy generates enormous amounts of energy and invigorates and stimulates every atom of the human being, including all of the chakras. So, to back up a little bit and give a bit of background from what I learned in Gnosticism, this whole sexual topic was actually originally taught in many spiritual groups and secret societies throughout history. From certain older sects of Buddhism to early alchemists to Freemasons, who famously wear those white aprons above their crotch, which originally symbolizes sexual chastity and purity. And also Christian Gnostics also understand baptism to originally mean the cleansing of the sexual waters, hence why initiates are submerged in holy water in baptism. We'll cover more symbolic references as we go along. This deeper spiritual sexual knowledge would usually not be revealed to members until months or years of being a member of whatever group, or until the teacher felt that the person was ready and showed a certain level of advancement and commitment. In some countries, this subject was more natural to talk about, such as in India, this principle of sexual conservation was called brahmacharya. I've left a free PDF in the description below on this. So, even though for many centuries until this age of information, it was always considered one of the best kept secrets of occultism and secret societies. But here we are now at a time where almost all information is being spread into the public, and hence why we're seeing this ancient tantric practice so frequently discussed openly in spiritual communities, which is great, but also tricky in terms of helping people integrate this appropriately and with proper guidance. So, to understand what sexual energy is, we also have to understand the human being and its different kind of minds. And on the surface, we have our intellectual center, our thoughts. We also have our emotions. And then, most powerful of all, we have our sexual center. What is felt most intensely in the body? Thoughts, emotions, or sexuality? Clearly, our sexual center is what is most often a more powerful driving force for not just our desires of procreation, but also for many worldly desires, such as our job, the way we dress, the way we talk, and how we feel. Our sexual energy, our sexual center, is the primal root chakra part of ourselves, and it can influence us with certain ideas, thoughts, and emotions which connect to our heart and brain and other centers within our being. And it can either fuel our passions for egoic sensual desires, or it can be channeled into healthier creative use. You see, it is a double-edged sword, which is why intelligence and mindfulness is needed. Now, let's get more specific. An important and core part of this practice involves stopping, renouncing, and transcending what is most chased after in any sexual act. That is the notorious orgasm. So, just to be clear, this practice is about giving up the orgasm, but we cannot go about this simple mindedly. This requires a great amount of self inquiry, intelligence, and discipline, and a profound understanding of ourselves and why we are addicted to the sensation of orgasm. With practice, we will begin to see enormous benefits, such as much more energy, more mental clarity, more vigor and strength, to be more in touch with our emotions, have much deeper meditation experiences, and so on. We give up those 10 seconds of sensual pleasure in order to experience a deeper, longer lasting bliss. Early alchemists would call this keeping the furnace alight within the inner laboratory of ourselves. So think about it. What is one of the most powerful and addictive sensual pleasures and experiences of the physical body? The experience of the orgasm is a building up of massive amounts of energy until eventually this enormous energy becomes so great and boom, there is an expelling force and we feel this energy leave the body, which is physically expressed as sperm or semen. And what happens afterwards? We are left depleted. This is much more pronounced in men than in women. Women are wired a little differently, but the principles are essentially the same. Women, I apologize if I make too many references to men and the male anatomy because, well, I've been practicing this for years and I'm a man, and as I said, women are different, opposites, in fact. And if you want to get much more specific female related advice on how you can apply this whole practice, I highly recommend Mantak Chia's book called Cultivating Female Sexual Energy. With that said, all the information here should be applicable and related to you anyway. And of course, with that said, also, some people are more naturally sexually pure than others. And I think this is usually a little more common in women than in men. For example, a man who masturbates multiple times a day, always watching porn, is the one who is going to see the obvious benefits of this practice first, more than anyone else, right? But what is also common, and what that man may also say, is he feels more relaxed after an orgasm. Well, yes, because you just released a lot of energy and a lot of tension and pressure. But it's this pressure and strength that we can learn to condense within the body. And so, what's the deal here? Do we stop all sexual activity and just be in this state of agitation and tension? Absolutely not. And that's where the principle of transmutation comes in. This energy needs to be creatively applied to have a direction and purpose. It can either go downwards and outwards, or it can be cultivated inwards and upwards through the spine and through the channels that are related to the spine. This is the true and original meaning behind kundalini, the snake, which can be seen as going up the spine, through the energy centers and nervous system, illuminating the heart, brain, and chakras. The caduceus, which you can see on the screen, is used as a symbol of medicine because this practice does not just give us more energy to become spiritually awakened and focus, but it also has the power to invigorate and heal the physical body. The nervous system, kidneys, adrenal glands, and prostate in particular all really benefit from this and are no longer under so much stress and can function with a lot more power. This energy can be used to also become a more powerful healer or Reiki practitioner, but that's a whole other topic. To talk briefly about other historical symbolisms, the aura or golden halo that is often depicted amongst spiritual masters such as Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, saints, etc., actually signify that their sexual energy has been purified and directed towards their higher centers, i.e., their heart and head. In depictions of Shiva, too, you can see a fountain of water, water representing sexual energy spraying out from the top of his head, meaning that the energy is going inwards and upwards, up his spine and healing the brain. Sexual transmutation is the original fountain of youth, or tree of life. It's taught in Gnosticism that when we ate from the tree of knowledge, we started to abuse sexual energy and experience the orgasm. And so we left the Garden of Eden, which was our innocence and source of spiritual bliss and enlightenment. And now we have to understand that tree of knowledge by going back into the Garden of Eden, by regenerating pure sexual energy and sexuality back into our bodies. Instead of eating those apples from the tree, we want to grow our own apples and become the tree. And if you're into Kabbalah, you can maybe guess which sphere or sephirot is the sexual aspect on the graph. It's Yesod. This is to do with the etheric body, just as the sacral chakra is also to do with sex. When this energy center is constantly depleted, like many men in particular are, then we struggle to get in touch with our emotions. And it's essential to know that one must be thoroughly in tune with their emotions if they want to astral project. The astral body, often being referred to as the emotional body, is connected to this spiritual, sensual experience of out of body phenomena in this way. So you may also start to see now why the etheric body is also called the vital body and why it is also called the foundation. Early alchemists also taught the practice of this aspect within hidden meanings, because if they talked about it so matter of frankly back then, the church would have simply killed them, like they did with so many occultists back then. And so the philosopher's stone actually represents the sexual organ, and the transmutation of lead into gold means to transmute raw sexual energy into something of high or divine value. So, transmuting and cleansing sexual energy does not just mean stopping masturbation and stopping looking at porn and all that, but it first means to stop and understand our lower lustful nature internally, psychologically, where it all begins. This is the most important part. Practicing this without internal exercise is going to be very problematic for you. But if you do practice this internally, then you're going to experience growth, learning, and progression. So, this means for us to become highly aware of our tendencies and impulses to want to quickly gratify our sexual habits. For example, we may have certain triggers, maybe walking down a road, seeing a certain part of someone's body, and then we can't stop holding the memory of that image in our heads, and it fills our mind with lustful thoughts all day, keeping us in unconsciousness. This is not an easy task to bring about conscious awareness of, especially if we can't rein in our sexual impulses. Our sexual center holds some of the deepest desires and emotions within us. So, this really requires us to be tremendously honest with ourselves and our feelings, and we have to be actively working towards self transformation. So, how do we actually transmute this energy? We first need self-restraint, then a realization of the nature of lust, and that masturbation and watching porn is a waste of time. And then we ground all of this with a combination of daily meditation and pranayama practices. Yes, you can do things such as, distracting yourself, putting your passions into your business, going to the gym and reading all the time. But the crux of this practice is self transformation, and we have to understand ourselves psychologically. So that's why daily meditation and pranayama breathing practices is really recommended if you want to commit to successfully retaining and sublimating your energy. So, what is usually required is that you commit to a meditation practice of at least once a day. I will give you a very powerful practice towards the end of this video, which I do every day, and I will explain why it works. Before I do, let's understand more how this energy affects our daily lives. Imagine for a moment all the blissful feelings of when you were first in love with someone as your more innocent, younger self, combined with all the sexual vitality that you had. Now, imagine retaining all that and letting it flow through your body and letting it lovingly open your heart in ecstasy and happiness and all the wonderful sensations that comes with falling in love and being sexually attracted to someone. Through sexual transmutation, this can become your natural state. It is not a state we were ever meant to lose. And through retaining this sacred, life giving force and essence, we begin to raise our overall energy levels. Not just energy levels of being able to stay awake or walk long distances, yes, that too, but spiritual energy levels as well. And you start to become more sensitive to beauty and subtler dimensions of consciousness, and you begin to have the energy to lead a more contemplative and equilibrated, balanced life. And you start to develop a stronger intuition about deeper subjects as your mind and brain develops. You may even start to find yourself talking more poetically and articulately. These are just some of the signs of purification and transmutation at a base primal level. Let's also talk about the difference between physical semen and sexual energy. On one hand, we have semen, and on the other, we have sexual energy. Semen builds up in the body, but this is not exactly what creates sexual magnetism and desire. It's the compulsion and attachment towards the sensual experience of being full of semen that we behave in certain ways that creates egoic desires and lust. We have to learn to be comfortable with being full of semen without spilling the cup of Hermes, to use another symbolic reference. In other words, to ejaculate. When I say lust, I mean as an opposition to love, right? Because lust and love are not the same thing. I can make an entire video for this if needed. Love is the direct experience of sacred and divine and sublime emotion for something real in our experience, right? Without attaching or clinging to it. But lust is the egoic desire and imagination of and neediness to gratify our sensual pleasures in a grotesque and selfish way, right? Let's also talk about how semen is produced. What we eat, the body turns into energy. And the very last thing it produces is semen. And how is all food grown? It first gets energy from the sun. And so sexual energy and semen has its roots in solar energy. And as you can see on the diagram, sperm accumulates in the seminal vesicle. Once it's full, it stops and maintains itself from there. So, the reason I'm telling you this is in response to many men's question about whether they will blow up or something. A man may retain his semen for 1 month and ejaculate, and then he may do it for many years and ejaculate. And both of those ejaculations will have the same amount of sperm. Okay, the term blue balls is a ridiculous thing and not true. Yes, when you first start to practice this, you may begin to feel some pressure down there, but after time, your body will adjust. What is actually felt as blue balls is, in other words, this pressure, and is actually just energy. In other words, raw psychic sexual energy, raw prana. It can be highly intensified and made very uncomfortable if you are full of egoic, lustful desires. So, this raw energy needs to be redirected towards focusing on something else, be it reading a book, exercising, manifesting something, your business, or best of all, meditation, pranayama, and spiritual realization, right? And also, let me give you an example of how this practice benefits couples. Think of a man who has no motivation in life, he has nobody and he's depressed, and so he has no energy. But one day he falls in love with this beautiful woman who he just can't stop thinking about. Well, when he falls in love, he suddenly has lots of energy, right? Everything is wonderful. He's having a great time with his new partner. And then someday down the road, they have sex. And he experiences the orgasm during lovemaking. There is a release of tension, and suddenly he has to stop having sex. He can't focus on pleasing her anymore with his penis, and he no longer feels that wonderful sexual magnetic force and attraction that made him so passionate and loving and caressing in the first place. Now, that man has to wait for his semen to accumulate again, especially if he is older and has been abusing his sexual energy and penis throughout his entire lifetime. And he has to wait until he regains that spark of sexual magnetism again, because during sex, he short circuited. He experienced the orgasm through an overloading of energy. And you can see now why balance and equilibrium is an important spiritual aspect here. And not just balance in sex, but if you want to go far with your practice of retention and sexual transmutation, then you have to consider the balance and moderation of many things: the food we eat, our emotions, anger, how long we stay awake, how much TV we watch. Balance on this path starts to become a lot more of an important thing to be mindful of. And to touch on this aspect of food briefly, you'll also find that since you're not losing so much energy through ejaculation anymore, you'll find your appetite for food overall will lessen and your metabolism will heighten, enabling your body to maintain or lose weight in a healthier and regulated way. So, furthermore, what if that man were instead to engage in sex with his new lover but not reach the orgasm? his sexual magnetic force towards his woman would not just suddenly fade and then he becomes sleepy and weak, but his electromagnetic field would continue to grow and become stronger, and his bioelectrical currents of his body would become even more charged instead of becoming discharged, right? So it wouldn't fade suddenly after those 10 seconds of pleasure, but stay alight in his experience. And what's more, he can have sex for as long as he wants and will also get rid of any future possibility of erectile dysfunction. For women, this is seen as menopause also being avoided. There's so many adverts these days for tablets to give more energy or aphrodisiacs and Viagra, right? And all of that is not needed. This is the only natural cure for erectile dysfunction. Quite profound, right? Well, there is so much to cover, and what I've said up to now really just is touching on the surface of all of this. If you want more information, definitely check out the videos, articles, and book recommendations I've given in the description below. And since this video has been going on for some time now, let's just get on to the powerful pranayama breathing practice, which can directly transmute sexual energy. I consider this essential in maintaining my own practice. I'll also give some extra tips afterwards for singles and couples. This breathing exercise is called Hamsa, and it is to be combined with meditation. So, first, get into your meditative posture and focus on relaxing the mind and body for some moments. Then, when you're ready and feel serene, begin this breathing practice. It's quite vigorous and can be compared to what is often called the breath of fire. So, take a vigorous, long, deep breath through the nostrils while mentally pronouncing Ham. Okay? Then exhale a quick and short breath out of your mouth, pronouncing the Sa a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this. So repeat this for at least a few minutes. Then, once you feel ready, stop and relax and let go of all control. Surrender and pay attention to the movement of energy that is happening within your body. Let your body breathe naturally. From here, you can go into a natural meditative state. If you do this while having retained your sexual energy for a significant amount of time, you will become highly aware of a wonderful samadhi, bliss-like, ecstatic sensation of well-being flowing through your body after you finish the Hamsa pranayama breathing practice. Let me demonstrate the breathing practice for you. It goes like this. Just from that one little cycle, I can already feel the energy moving in my body. So what I'm doing is I'm breathing in while mentally pronouncing okay? And I'm breathing out like that. Just a quick, vigorous breath out. You can pronounce the sa, the a bit, more pronounced if you like sa, sa, okay? But it's really up to you. The most important part over the actual pronunciation of the mantra is getting the breathing practice right. You should see powerful effects of this. It's powerful because what it does is overflows and rejuvenates prana into the body. You see how the inhale is longer than the exhale? That's important. You see, we usually breathe the wrong way. Our exhale is usually longer than our inhale. And so this practice reverses that negative inner circuitry so that our life force is stimulated and overflowed and recycled, and so that the energy is moved around the body properly. This influx and movement of prana directly stimulates and shifts and transmutes our sexual center, moving it into our other centers. It gets it all moving so that it's not stuck and constricted there in your genitals. And as you do this exercise, you can also mentally intend and feel your sexual energy move up the spine and into the heart and head, flowering and blooming into an energetic expansion of life force. This takes practice, I know, but be consistent and you will feel the results. It is really, really worth it. If done correctly, you will enter a very deep state of meditation and you will feel power and strength over your thoughts and emotions like you've never felt before. If you're tired of not being able to maintain or achieve a quiet state of mind, just try this practice and you'll see the results for yourself. Actually, throughout many yogic teachings, pranayama before meditation is considered essential, an essential part of the practice. Vigorous breathing practices like these are commonly overlooked. So, to break it down, number one, sit down upright, okay, in a nice position. Number two, relax the mind and body in whatever way you know how. It could be through visualization, progressive muscle techniques, whatever. Okay? Just relax and clear your mind. Number three, then begin pranayama. Do the Hamsa breath for at least a few minutes. And number four, stop pranayama and go immediately into meditation without moving. I 100% guarantee if you do this correctly, you will feel absolutely no sexual tension or agitation or temptation that you had before. You will feel much more in control of your own being and faculties. I have been doing this for years and I consider it the holy grail towards sexual transmutation and sexual mastery, and a powerful tool for deeper meditation. Again, the breathing practice goes like this. Sa, sa, sa. Okay, make sure the in breath is longer than the out breath. And when you breathe in and do ham mentally, you should be breathing through your nose and deeply into your abdomen, and your belly should expand. This may take practice if you're not used to deep breathing, but it's worth it in the long run if you stick at it. You'll get used to it. And then when you exhale, you should push the breath out of the mouth with a bit of vigor, with a bit of force. Your abdomen should contract and tense a little bit when this happens. And just to add to the significance of this, some hypnotists with negative intentions, right? In occultism, you could call these people black magicians, right? They make people breathe in short and exhale long because they know this makes the mind more susceptible. So you can see how breathing in the proper way wakes us up and snaps us out of dreamy states of mind. It wakes the senses up with soberness, calm, and fortitude. This entire practice, from the moment you go to sit down to relax and meditate, you should not move the body. Don't strain or stress, but just relax and stay still. And once you feel your meditation is finished, slowly open your eyes and start to move your physical body again in this more vibrant and purified state of being. If for any reason you're still feeling a lot of sexual agitation, then perhaps just go and distract yourself, right? Sometimes we just need to get our attention away from trying to overcome our sexual impulses. Do something productive. Go take a cold shower, exercise, clean your house, read spiritual books. You can also do Kegel exercises, actually, which means tensing that muscle between your sexual organ and anus multiple times, right? It's the same organ you use to hold in your urine, right? You can contract it tightly and let go about 50 times in one little session. So do it every day. It will strengthen your pelvic floor and also help you to better control your flow of semen in the body. It only takes 50 seconds out of your day and can be done anywhere. This is also very helpful if you do, by any chance, start to feel you're going to ejaculate by accident in sex. You can just squeeze that muscle, thereby keeping the semen inside you. And that brings us on to the next part, which is if you're in a couple, the experience of having sex without reaching orgasm can be really wonderful. This is also a natural form of contraception, but don't take my word for it. I know a lot of people will say, what about premature ejaculation, etc. But really, I have practiced this for many years and no babies. And also, Mantak Chia has done it for 40 years with no issues too. And I know many others in my personal life who have had no problems, such as my Gnostic teacher as well, who is happily married. The benefit of sex without orgasm is that we can work with sexual and spiritual energy in a direct way in the sexual act in order to invigorate ourselves. You will also see that you will have absolutely no issue with gaining an erection, and you won't need lustful thoughts in order to engage in sex. And during the sexual act, instead of being lustful, you will start to feel more emotions of love in your heart center as the energy starts to disperse throughout your body instead of coming out of your genital. During this time, you can also take your mind off the sexual pleasures of the activity altogether, and you can pray internally, you can recite mantras or visualize what you want to manifest in your life. Be it more a positive life, you want to experience astral projection, overcome a particular ego, have better business, or whatever. You are in the realm of creative cosmic energy, the same energy that enabled you to come into being, the same energy that enabled the cosmos to come into being, right? As above, so below. This is what is called sexual magic. It's to direct this raw sexual energy not to desires of the flesh, but to desires of the spirit or other types of manifestation. Now, if you do feel like you're going to reach orgasm during sex, particularly when you're first attempting this, pull out immediately and tense your entire body. Do the Kegel exercise I just described and do the Hamsa pranayama too. With practice, you should get a very good sense of when you're close to that stage anyway, and eventually you shouldn't get that close during the sexual act. Instead of reaching orgasm in sex, new sensations of bliss and ecstasy can start to be felt, and you can develop a much deeper union with your partner. This becomes more of a whole body energetic thing rather than a mediocre sensation just in the genitals. Remember, the words yoga and religion mean union. And so you may start to intuit now the meaning of why sexual energy and spirituality and this aspect of yin and yang, male and female, has more significance than most people think. For single people, of course, you don't really have an opportunity to experience and work with sexual energy in this way, but that's okay. And in a way, it's kind of easier at first to control your sexual energy and appetites without a partner. But if you do have a partner in the future, you'll see how practicing pure sexual union without orgasm is very beneficial and exposes you to certain energies that can help with your spiritual progression. Because, I mean, what is at the height of all religious and spiritual teachings? It is of love, right? Divine love. And this can be found within this whole principle, to be submerged within the union of the soul. I believe Mantak Chia's books also has more practices for single people as well, in case you're, scared that you're going to lose your sexual function and forget how to use your penis or something. So definitely check out his books. They're very helpful and informative. Also, for singles and any men, really, remember it's okay and natural to have erections. This does not mean you are doing anything bad. It doesn't mean you're being lustful, okay? Simply just go to meditate or get your mind off it, do something productive. Remember, sexual energy is normal and sacred and pure to begin with. It is our lust that makes it bad. And so, especially for men, you can experience erections during your sleep, and it's not always to do with lust. It can be to do with the rejuvenation and healing of your body. But yes, if you wake up and it's tempting you and it's distracting, go do the breathing exercises. You will feel relieved and invigorated. Erections are healthy, but on the other hand, erections combined with the negative use of imagination, in other words, lust, is what can lead to us going back into our old habits, which again, hence why meditation and self-knowledge is important. Okay, so I apologize if this episode turned out a little dispersed or unorganized. There's just so much I want to get across with so little time. I will end it here for now, and with a quote on the screen by the shaman Don Juan. If you like that quote, then check out my video called The Principle of Conserving Energy and listen to it and consider it in terms of sexual energy, and you'll start to get a deeper understanding of why saving energy is so crucial. Definitely don't forget to check out all the resources I've given in the description below, and if you have any questions at all, please do ask. Don't be ashamed to be specific or detailed. I know a lot of you are pursuing success in this practice, and as I've said, it is not an easy task, but it is absolutely worth it, and it takes a lot of practice, patience, and wisdom. I hope for those of you who are struggling with astral projection and meditation really benefit from this. If this is your first time hearing about this and you're implementing it in terms of hoping to gain better meditative states and lucid dreaming and astral projection, please let me know how you get on. I'd be interested to hear. And if you need more help, I can of course also give you much more of my time through the Patreon's Discord if you want to join. Well, thank you everyone, as always, for listening. This is Astral Doorway. I'm Gene Hart, and I will see you on the next episode.